I can't teach you what you don't know, but what you don't know can be happening. So that's an interesting line, right? I can't teach you what you don't know. What does that mean? Well, if you don't have a conceptual framework, it's hard to teach someone outside of what they already know. You might be, when you have knowledge and it expands, it's because it's predicated on other knowledge. But what if you're trying to teach an experience or share an experience that the person has no conceptual framework even to integrate it into, right? So I can't teach you what you don't know, but what you don't know could be happening, right? So even though you're not aware of it, it could be happening. I can't teach you what you don't know, but what you don't know can be happening. What is happening might be more profound than what you know. In other words, what you're missing actually might be transformative, right? So I can't teach you what you don't know, but what you don't know can be happening. What is happening might be more profound than you know. So here's the home run. Cultivate the happening. Practice, feel. Cultivate the happening. That's how you're going to learn about the subtle body. I'm going to be able to show you different instructions that actually activate another level of your mind-body relationship and help you become aware of what's already happening. So the thing I want you to get is that the exploration of the subtle body is you being able to not learning new things, but being able to recognize what's happening that you weren't aware of. And what you weren't aware of is because you thought that your knowledge was limiting you, right? And that the part that you weren't being aware of is really important. And it's going to be really important if you live with a disability. All right, so sit up straight and tall. So I believe that, and we're going to be spotlighting Amy, so you can see somebody doing the poses too, the way I'm asking. And so before you start asana, allow, right? Allow. So you sit there because your mind, in particular, when you're having to listen a lot, but in general, your mind doesn't like to be in 3 dimensions. It likes to control more than that. So as you sit up and you feel, right, locate yourself in the room. Open, whatever that means, to what's below you and above you and on each side of you. And in particular, open to what's behind you, to what you cannot see and you don't get to control, right? So you let that in and know that you're in your own house, so you don't have to worry, right? So open to the room. Don't let the mind squish it into something that it can handle, right? So to me, asana is an attempt at congruence, right? It's an attempt to learn how to move your body in a way that's congruent with the sensation of what you are. So the allowing is a door opener to the quieter, emptier part of what you are. And then asana is going to be, you get to clarify that sensation, right? So hit down with your sitting bones and lift your very low abdomen slightly up. So differentiate between the sitting bones and where your tailbone is, for example, and hit the sitting bones down and rise up through the chest. Open the chest. Now I want you to not just lift the front of the chest, I want you to broaden across the back ribs. I want you to spread the space between your shoulder blades. Bring the shoulder blades down and watch how that helps the chest lift. But stay connected to the outsides of your feet and your sitting bones. Don't steal from your base. So stay grounded as you rise up. Stay grounded as you rise up. Bring your hands into prayer. Close your eyes from top to bottom if you're comfortable. So notice that your hands be attractive, right? Instead of pushing too hard together, right? Feel your sitting bones, feel your feet. And so now the hands allow you to feel more symmetry. So equalize the pressure between your hands. I tend to push harder on my right, so I have to like watch that as a yogi, right? Connect the heel of my hands a little bit more and notice how that activates the shoulder blades, the backside of the shoulder blades a little bit differently. Feel equal from side to side, each sitting bone, each side of your face, each temple, the outside of each foot. Soften around the temples, the jaw, the inside of the mouth. Let go of your day and prepare your mind to do yoga. Repose. Your mind will wane. The body is the first foundation of mindfulness. Quote from the historical Buddha. Good. And release your hands down to your thighs, palms up. Take your sternum up towards your chin and your chin down over your sternum. Lift the sternum slightly with more intensity than you drop the chin. This is really an important position, right? Look what it does to your rib cage, to your sense of stability. So the sternum lifts and the chin drops in humility. Notice the breath into each nostril, into each lung. Stay connected to each sitting bone and the outside of each foot. Be in the whole vessel. Raise your head up with closed eyes. Open your eyes. Change your interlock on your legs. Because as a yogi, you got to work both sides, right? That's a good thing to pass on to me. All right. All right. So if you think about what the spine is, right? There's some magical energy in your spine, call it Kundalini energy or whatever, right? But it manifests as a tender piece of flesh, your spinal cord, which is so sensitive that if you flick it with your finger, it actually can cause paralysis. And then there's bone, and there's disc between the bone. That's your core channel. That's how evolution has organized your being, right? But if that's your core channel, what do you think your ribs are? So I want you to like explore the idea that your ribs are the fingers of your spine, wrapping around your lungs and your breath to caress your breath. So the intersection between your breathing and your spine is perhaps the most important intersection in your life, in your inward life. Getting better at breathing directly into your spine is a skill that's worth practicing. So on this next inhalation, just notice how the rib cage expands and notice there's a movement of energy around the back side of your back, and then it goes in the vertebrae, the ribs go right into your spine. So there's an awareness of the back body more on the inhalation. So it's kind of like the energy of the inhalation travels around the rib cage and goes right into the spine where the ribs attach to the spine. That's really cool, right? Be aware of that while feeling your sitting bones and lifting your sternum. So just realize that your rib cage receives your breath. So the translation from breath to bone is actually happening right on your inhalation. Animation to bone, oxygen to bone, right? Right? The expansion. Okay, so on this next couple of breaths, I want you to feel that that you're going to exhale. Take a breath in, and then exhale as if I'm pushing in on the inner edge of each shoulder blade and pushing you forward. So I want you to exhale as if you're leading from your back ribs. So you're exhaling and it's coming forward. Now, when you exhale from the back ribs, does anybody feel, and I can't see you all the way, does anybody feel that energy goes, you get more connected to your base on the exhalation? And there's awareness that goes out through the top of your head? Guys, that's the subtle body. Okay, so much so that even some ancient, and in one of the ancient texts, they say that the exhalation dissipates like 12 fingers above your head. I'm not sure about 12 fingers. I don't know if it's my grandpa's fat farm fingers or, but the idea is that as you're exhaling, first you're taking in the world. Remember, we're symbiotically related to the space around us. We can't exist without the space around us. So you're taking it in, appreciating it, and then you are exhaling into service. And the energy lengthens on exhalation. It extends, right? So just watch that. Let it in. Exhale and feel the extension. And if you don't feel it, if you don't feel some of these weird instructions, don't worry about it. Feel whatever you feel, right? But I want to get the beginning sense of that there's energy moving without your conscious volition. It's happening all the time. And you get to direct it. Good. And then release. Take your right hand outside your left leg. So then some of you probably just, you've done it 1,000 times. So wait, now go back again. Okay, so now we're going to kind of do a quick a twist in Sukasana, or a simple cross legs, that I read because Engar taught in a class, right? So first he says, let the gravitational effect land on your legs. What the hell does that line even mean? Except feel the earth. Surrender to it. And then he says, activate your sitting bones. And then as if you're turning from your tailbone, start to rise the tailbone up. So I don't know exactly where my tailbone is, even less so than you, because I can't feel as much as you because I'm paralyzed from the chest down. But I kind of know about where it is. And I start rising that up. So as you take your right arm outside your left leg, right, I want you to hit down through the sitting bones and turn from your tailbone and take the arm out, right? So you got the arm off to the side. Now, I don't want you to go far into the twist. I want you to hit down with your sitting bones and rise up and do it from the tailbone. So you're augering your awareness down through the floor as you're rising up. Okay, so now I want you, as you start to turn, I want you to turn your waist a little faster than your chest. So more attention around the low waist as that turns. In other words, auger down to rise up. Okay, and so now find the midline again. So draw a line from your left part of your bottom rib cage to your right hip. And then from the right rib cage to the left hip. Hit down, rise up, inhale, and then exhale, revolve. Again, turning the waist a little faster than the chest, right? And then on this next one, if you want to take your head around, know that that's the frosting on the cake. Now, if we were here in person, we'd partner up and I'd put my hand, or we'd have your partner put their hand right gently between your shoulder blades, right? To soften your pose even while you're acting, as you're moving. So let in some grace, not just strain. Good, and then come on back to center. Be in the center. Now, hopefully that twist, although pretty hard to do, especially the lower part of the twist, right? Kind of through the awareness through more of your body than you typically get. Now take the left hand outside the right leg. Remember, no, wait, go back. Bad teaching, bad teacher, right? Gravitational effect on your legs. In other words, allow the earth, let something drop. Okay, and then hit down with your sitting bones and lift the tailbone up, and then from the tailbone turn and take your left hand outside your right leg and the other hand behind you. So now turn the waist faster than the chest, the waist faster than the chest. Inhale, lift up, exhale, revolve. And then find the midline again, the core axis. So draw a line from your right bottom floating rib to your left hip. And then from your left bottom floating to your right hip. So you get it from both sides. Hit down, auger down, rise up, inhale. And then exhale and revolve, moving the waist faster than the chest. And then, because that I know causes a lot of strain when you try to like move the waist faster than the stress, feel the hand come, or a hand come between your shoulder blades, and make the pose light and buoyant. Allow. Inhale, lift up. Exhale, revolve. Good. And then come on back into center. So one of the things that Bikas Iyengar says, and I'm an Iyengar teacher, is that one of his goals is to help think about your body as a jar, and the light of consciousness is like water inside the jar, right? And one of the tasks of asana is to help the water touch all the sides of the jar, right? Now, what if I'm paralyzed and I still want the water to touch all the sides of the jar, and I don't get to move my legs or shake the jar to do it? How do you instruct a student to be able to help them fill the whole vessel? Right? That's part of the task. All right, everyone stand up in Tadasana. So I'd rather you do the one where your feet are together. It's fine if they're hip width apart, but that emphasizes stability on the outside of the hips rather than the midline as much. So there's not one that's more right than the other. It's not the one that I'm teaching, right? So you've, I'm sure, heard this instruction, right? Balance on the four corners of your feet. So, but watch what happens when you're asked to do something like that. That you have to go inward in order to find the four corners of your feet. You have to start hearing or feeling your body a little bit differently, right? So one of the ways to teach inwardness is to teach balance. That's a big insight, right? So you're balancing on the four corners of your feet. Tadasana's got multiple movements, multiple directional movements. So the core is rising up, you're being majestic like a mountain, but don't forget the mountain's incredibly grounded on the earth. So there's a downward connection to the heels, right? As you're rising up, broadening across the collarbone, stretching your arms down. So you're moving in multiple directions. This is like one of the principles of a yoga pose. This is a couple of them. And so now I want you to do something different. I want you to now not just balance in your own body, I want you to balance in the whole room. Remember, you have interoception, which is inward awareness, but you also have awareness of yourself in space. Your brain is wired for both. And so you're balancing and engaging your body, but you're trying to soften your jaw, the inside of your mouth, so you can be balanced in the whole room. Right? So you're using the room and your sense of grounding to expand your awareness. Good. And then release. Notice your connection to the room changes when you're not in as much alignment. Right? All right. So come back into Tadasana. Do the pose. But now I want you to keep your heels down, but I want you to take more weight on the balls of your feet. So you're like almost going to tip forward. And then when you're in this position, are you more or less connected to the whole room? Right? And I'm going to say it's less. You're feeling more physically because your mind had to jump in and save you from falling, and then come back and then go behind the balance point, right? More weight towards your heels. And then watch how your neck has to grab. Conditions of safety just got violated. So your mind had to grip and your body had to activate. And when you're on more weight on your heels, are you more or less connected to the room? Right? So now come into the center. Use balance and grounding to stay connected to what's outside of you. Muscular action, unless it's well trained, disconnects you from what's around you. One of the insights of asana. Good. And then release. So this idea of being grounded and being able to touch the whole room, this is also part of the subtle body. So now take a block and put it like Amy's going to have it sideways on the floor, you know? Mm-hmm. So you've got it on the long side of the block. Yep. It's because you want reference down the whole inner seam. Remember, I'm trying to like show you that there's a happening in your pose that maybe you kind of were aware of, but not so consciously, right? So you're standing in Tadasana. You got the block between your ankles, so you have more tactile sensation, but now squeeze the block with your ankles and notice what happens to your chest. Anyone feel like that rise, that taller feeling when you engage your legs, right? Now, don't squeeze the block and watch how gravity changes, right? So there's a more heavy feeling, okay? I didn't tell you to do anything with your chest or to feel bigger. I just had you squeeze the block. This is a big insight, right? So now squeeze the block again. Follow the sensation of the rise. No, we're just like, I cannot see Bethany. It's only Amy that's going to be doing the class, right? So you're following the rise and then release the block. Don't squeeze it and watch the drop, right? So one of the things about the subtle body is that the subtle body often disguises itself as relief. Okay, so, and that's why restorative is actually not just restorative, but that's for another day, right? And so now I want you to, again, squeeze the block, follow the rise, be strong in your legs. But now, as you rise up, I want you to soften and open the elbow pit, the skin on your inner elbow, and broadens gently across your palms. So you're squeezing the block and getting the rise, but you're staying open on another level to stay grounded. So the grounding comes subtly and by squeezing the block. Good. And then release. So now, one of the ways that this is one of the teaching methods, when you're teaching the subtle body, like notice I've gone a couple of cycles where you squeeze the block and then you let go of the block. The mind, unfortunately for human beings, learns more from loss than it does from gain. We tend to habituate gain and connect loss to threat, right? So when you, why I constantly had you like release it to feel the difference, that's going to show you more about what you gained, right? And that's going to be a repeated pattern for teaching the subtle body, right? So now I want you to squeeze the block and feel the rise and follow the whole thing. Now I want you to over squeeze the block. Squeeze it in one direction, kind of harder. Don't hurt your ankles, and now I ask you, as you squeeze in the block extra hard, are you more or less connected to the room? And the answer would be less. So I want you to let go of the block. No, don't squeeze it and let it notch the drop, right? And so I want you this next time to squeeze the block enough to feel the rise, but not too hard where you disconnect from the room. So squeeze the block, find the sweet spot, the sweet range of exertion that actually enhances your connection, right? And know this is like hypervigilance for someone with PTSD. If you're trying too hard with your will, you're actually going to disconnect yourself from your experience. So you're finding that sweet range, and that is in every single pose. You need to find the sweet range of connection for a yoga pose and learn how to hone that middle space, middle range, and then release. So now we're going to do it one more time, and I'm going to add one more instruction, right? So now I want you to squeeze the block, feel the rise, but now instead of just squeezing the block in one direction, I want you to squeeze the block and lengthen down the inseam of your foot, each foot. So you're not just going in one direction, you're going in two. And notice if very subtly, when you feel the inner edge of your foot rather than push in one direction, maybe your chest lifts a little bit better. This is a huge insight about asana. Good, and then release. All right, so the line from Bikas Angar that I'm trying to show you right now is that he says, when my body's one, when I can't differentiate my body, my mind shatters into pieces. So like when you're over squeezing the block and just going in one direction, right? He says that's what he means by when you try too hard, your mind kind of breaks into pieces, right? But when you can differentiate more parts of your body, like squeezing the block and lengthening down the inside edge of your foot, the experience gets lighter, right? So when my body's one, my mind's in pieces. When my body's in pieces, my mind can be one. And he goes on to say that's what he means by total freedom, right? But the insight I want you to take from this, right, is that one of the very basic things you're helping students do with all levels of ability is to differentiate different parts of their body, right? Because that's going to bring them a sense of wholeness. So you have the pose break into pieces to become whole again, right? And that's a really, really important insight that's happening in all asana, right? And then squeeze the block again, lengthen down the inside edge, and just notice that one of the things that squeezing the block does is it makes your thigh muscles grip your thigh bone more. So there's an exertion of muscle and grounding that then hits down to the heels and up to the top of the head. So that physical action is a form of grounding unless it's done violently, and then it becomes ungrounding, right? The other thing about this, which is more complicated, is that when you are asked to squeeze the block and lengthen down the inside edge of your foot, because Iyengar will say it's through the skin that intelligence enters the poses, right? And so by being aware of more than one direction, a different quality of your brain has to get engaged. And notice when you squeeze the block and lengthen down, you have to go inward a little bit in order to distinguish those two sensations. That'd be pratyahara, working in an outward action. That would be withdrawing from the senses, being pivotal to an outward expression. Good, and then release. All right, downward facing dog, Adho Mukha Svanasana. Downward facing dog. So be on your hands and knees. Have your hands slightly in front of your shoulders, your hips slightly in front of your knees, your feet at least, your knees at least hip width apart, right? Turn the feet under and come on up into downward facing dog. So one of the interesting things that yoga poses do is they differentiate, they change your base. So now your base is not just your feet, it's your hands and your feet. That's an opportunity for the brain to take in more. And you know a lot of the instructions, right? Press down to the index mound, roll the inner upper arm up, extend from your outside of your hips up towards the ceiling, engage your legs. So maybe, broaden across your calf. I know that a lot of you are rushing your heels down. I don't even have to be able to see the screen. That's not actually more yoga, just so you know, unless you're really flexible in your calves, right? So you're just trying to breathe into that, just feel your pose, Good, and then come on down into child's pose. Good, and then come on up into the pose again. Come up onto your hip, turn the feet under, come on up, make it all methodical, right? So be in the pose that you normally do, hopefully you got not too much weight in your shoulders, right? So now I want you to do something wrong. Keep your hands in the same place, but bring your fingers together and feel how bad that sucks. Like that's horrible. Your pose just got way heavier, right? Your breath changed. Now open, spread your fingers and spread your palms and feel the change and lightness in your body. And then prove it to yourself again. Bring your fingers back together. Watch how the prana, the subtle body, shuts down and the pose gets more physical. Open the fingers and the palms. Rise from that open feeling. Good. And then come on down into child's pose. Good. And then come on up, come closer to your camera if you can. So, thumbs up if your pose got way crappier and heavier when you put your fingers together. Okay? I'm a huge fan of the movie The Matrix, and I can't help it. Okay? But when Neo goes and visits the Oracle, and she says, "Don't worry about knocking over the vase," and he knocks over the vase, and she says the line to him, "What'll really bake your noodle is would you have knocked over the vase if I hadn't told you?" Okay. I love that, the way she utters and the sparkle in her eye when she says, "What'll really bake your noodle." Okay. Now remember, what is happening may be more profound than what you know. Okay. Think about that line from Prashana Iyengar. The difference between this and this should bake your noodle. It should make you go, "Oh my goodness. How could that change so much of the sensation in the pose? Why would that?" And I remember the first time I read that, it was in the first year I was doing yoga, that I read that Bikas Iyengar said that all of dog pose is reflected in the hands. Okay. But it's not just the hands. That when you start to realize the wholeness of the poses, Every action affects every action, right? Everything, and that's why, because Iyengar yoga is so precise, and so much so that it gets people over attached to the precision. I think that's one of its downfalls, in my opinion. But it's like the fact that little things can be transformative. Think about the freedom that creates. So they have a student, you ever see Chris Becker, who's got really intense CP, and he's like got this contraction, which you often see a lot in CP, right? And he does it. It happens because it's natural, but it also helps him balance because he doesn't have the core stability. So this contraction actually has a purpose. Okay, but when you help him, when you help his wrist, and you help it straighten out, not force it straight, but start to give it reference, the wave of relief travels through his entire body. Now, this is one of the things I'm only being able to convey to you through story right now, but I'm telling you, if you're in person, you would actually feel this come through your senses. When all of a sudden he comes into slightly better alignment, the relief travels chronically through his entire body. And isn't that a version of what happens to you when you've got a good adjustment in class? Where all of a sudden the energy moves better? Yeah, so it's just on a continuum. What you're going to see with people, with working with people with neurological deficit, is that it makes you learn more about the flow of prana because it's so obvious. It's actually harder to see in traditional students how important it is that energy flows like that. So here's another line. I think it's in the handout, but I'm not sure. That's completely changed my yoga practice, and you just got an example of it. Because Iyengar writes in the Tree of Yoga, you only need two things for a yoga pose: a center of gravity and a sense of direction. Okay, remember, I'm trying to show you things about the subtle body. So I remember reading that and thinking that was really good news as a paralyzed person. He didn't say muscular action. So a center of gravity and a sense of direction. Now, one of the things that I want you to get is that when your fingers came together in dog pose, you lost the sense of direction in the pose. And it got way more physical, right? Your shoulders had to lock up, you had to grip. When you went off balance in Tadasana, taking more weight to the balls of your feet or towards your heels, you lost the center of gravity. And therefore, you lost the sense of direction and the sense of the mountain, right? This is constantly occurring in yoga poses, okay? And I'm telling you that most of your students with altered mind-body relationships, regardless of the condition, they are they're not in balance. So they're constantly without the sense of direction. Now, I'm going to tell you that sense of direction isn't just where you're working physically. It's something that's received in a yoga pose. Okay, so when your fingers go together in dog pose and it gets heavier, you're not receiving the direction as much. So it's the sense of direction isn't achievable without being on balance, but it's also not created strictly by your physical actions. It's existing on a different level of your mind-body relationship. And it's crucial. If you can't help me feel that level, I'm only going to be doing the outside of poses. I might stick with you, and I'll think yoga is just a form of exercise, which is not bad. There's nothing wrong with yoga being a form of exercise. It's just you're only giving me half the enchilada, right? And this workshop is about the other sides of the enchilada. So everyone sit in Dandasana. Staff pose, legs straight out in front of you, right? And if you're in a chair, so like thinking about you, Anna, you can have your leg up on a chair, or you can just do it seated, right? Because this, what I'm going to tell you is obvious, right? So your legs are straight out in front of you if you're on the floor. And in staff pose, your hands are down by your hips. You lift your chest. You hit the inner upper thigh in and down. And you extend awareness out through the inner heel. In other words, use the underside of your legs to extend the energy, and then open the sole of the foot without locking your knees. Open the skin on your foot, like, I don't know, let's be barfy, like a sunrise, right? So the chest lifts, something goes down, the inner upper thigh rolls in and down. That keeps the energy in your legs more focused, right? Now just show yourself what happens when you release your legs and let your feet roll out. Let the femur bones roll out. Just let them roll out. Do you feel the change in your whole experience of the pose? Yeah. Now roll them in and down, lift up through the chest. So alignment's going to matter in a big way. Now I want everyone to drop their chest. So Amy, could you sit sideways? So right, and I just wanted you to see, like, so she lifts her chest in Tadasana, but now when she slump a little bit, right? It doesn't have to be a lot. I want you all to do that and feel what happens to the sensation in your legs. Right now, lift your chest and feel the awareness travel more out through your legs. And then again, teaching by contrast, drop your chest and watch how the pose gets duller and heavier. Okay, and again, this next time, lift the chest, extend out through the inner heel as the inner upper thigh hits in and down. Take a couple of breaths. And then release again and slouch, and notice the change of gravity, or the center of balance on your sitting bones is gone. Okay, and then release. So this level of sensation that I hope you felt, that you were more full-bodied when your chest was lifted. This is going to be one of the principles I'm going to talk about in a while, right? Later today. But this level of sensation between a lifted chest and a dropped chest transcends the experience of a severed spinal cord. In other words, I can feel it too. Again, the oracle's talking to Neo right now, right? It's like, it should bake your noodle. That with a severed spinal cord, I can feel that. Okay, and there isn't a student that we have, well, pretty much, that can't feel that difference. In fact, there's a picture in the handout that if you were to have homework tonight, and hopefully Amy or Bethany, you remind me to say it again, it's on page 11 in one of the photos, right? There's someone sitting in Tadasana, and then someone coming up behind them, keeping their heel on the floor and pushing their foot right into the sacrum. Have someone, if you're living with someone, do that for you tonight. And see and then have them slowly remove the foot and watch how much the world gets heavier, right? Like, that's a piece of homework for you, because you're not going to believe it when you get more centered on your sitting bones and your bone gets supported in your sacrum, what happens to your chest, right? So here's a little secret, there are all these secrets, so I want to tell you. There's the sacrum mirrors the sternum. This is in almost every yoga pose, right? And so that's on the inner body. So that little homework on page 11 is to show you what happens. And the person can't push too hard. They can't, they gotta, and the heel has to stay on the floor. But you'll get this lift up through your chest, and awareness will go down your legs. And you didn't try to do any of it. It just happened. The happening happened, which is actually, come back into the pose. What the pose is trying to show you is that as you lift your chest, awareness is starting to flow out. You roll your inner upper thighs to catch it, and you extend out through your heels, right? It's incredible, but it seems ordinary, especially to you, all of you that have more traditional mind-body relationships. It's not ordinary at all. And a lifted chest and a center of gravity is going to be, in a sense of direction, is going to be in every yoga pose. So now can you start to piece together why I'm not just into helping you just show me how to get into shapes. I want you to help me feel poses from inside to out. And it will make the shape of the pose less important, which will help me feel like I belong. Everyone has a seat waiting for them at the sacred table of yoga. Everybody. And it's the teachers that have to realize how to pull the chair back, right? For someone to sit there. It's up to the teacher. And that's why I'm so grateful you're here with me. All right, everyone stand up. Jump or step your feet wide. So be on your mat. We're going to do a couple standing poses. Arms wide. So, so now the reason why you don't, well, everyone now with your feet wide, right? If they're point your feet straight ahead, right? And so notice how that engages your inner thigh without you having to try to do anything, right? And now turn your feet out a little bit and watch how much heavier the pose gets, how much more disconnected the pose gets, how much duller. Now turn your feet straight ahead again. Use your legs. Put your hands on your hips. Okay, so one of the things that standing poses do is they put strength of the legs underneath expansion of the chest and arms. And they do it with different relationships to gravity. And we're going to try to be showing you how true this is. So now with your feet pointed straight ahead, your thighs rolling slightly away from each other. In other words, that makes you have to grip the muscle a little bit, right? From that strength, inhale and lift your arms up wide from the underside of your arms. So I'm looking at Sydney from South Africa. Take your stance wider, for God's sakes. I said it to Cindy, but it's about 2/3 of you, right? She just happens to be on the screen, right? And now be bigger in space. Now put your hands on your rib cage, and just let that be a calming sensation. Breathe into your hands, right? Feel your breath go into your rib cage, into your hands. Couple of breaths. As you have that reference on your diaphragm, let that calming be in your legs. Okay, so now inhale, take your arms wide. And breathe, take a couple of breaths into your bottom floating rib. And notice the sensation of grounding that occurs when you include your rib cage like that. Good. And then take your arms down, step your feet back together. Stand in Tadasana. So one of the things that I read in Gita Iyengar's preliminary course book was that standing poses are teaching beginners how to synchronize the movement of their joints. Okay. So I think that's it. 1 foot in, 1 foot out, coming into Trikonasana, which we're about to do. If you have to modify, do whatever you have to modify, right? So one of the things I started thinking about then was that if I'm with a student that can't take their arms and legs wide, can't stand up, I can still teach them joint awareness, right? Being more aware of your joints. And there's a reason for that, by the way. Your brain has more receptors in your joints than other places in their body. So it's actually an interesting way to activate the brain. So take your arms and legs wide. Remember, hopefully you're old enough to remember the game Light Bright. Color with light. So put light in your ankles, your knees, your hips, your shoulders, your elbows, your wrists. Know that your head's a joint, right? So put light there. And from that sense of where each joint is, expand out into space. Synchronize your breath with that expansion. So inhale and expand out even more. Exhale and extend out even farther. Bring the muscle to the bone and extend out even farther. Don't forget the feeling of your hands on your own rib cage as you're getting bigger. Good. And then take your arms down, step your feet back into Tadasana. And then jump or step your feet wide, take your arms wide. So now here comes the movement of the joints, right? Turn your left foot in, right foot out. Try not to shake it all about. Right? So move your joints. Be aware of the emptiness that's in your joints. So now you press down through the inner edge of the front foot and you draw awareness from the kneecap up to the hip socket. In other words, you engage the front leg. As you do, draw a line across your pelvis, take the inner thigh, the back leg away from the front leg, and put a little bit more awareness in the outer rim of the back heel. Now feel length from your side waist to your side armpit and then under each arm. So the strength of your legs makes it through your torso and it helps you stay expanded, right? The work in your legs helps you stay expanded. Inhale on an exhalation, come down over the top of your front leg and come down into Trikonasana. Now, if you have balance issues, if you lean over onto a chair, you can kind of do the upper version of this. I don't see you on my screen, so I'm just thinking you're there. Okay, so now I want you to do something that, don't forget, use the block, right? Use stuff. Right now, I want you to do something wrong. I want you to let your belly fall towards the floor. Doesn't that suck? It sucks. Right? So now you instead roll your belly up towards the ceiling and realize why that instruction was that instruction. Then draw a line from your sacrum through the center of your chest, through the center of your mouth, through the top of your head, and revolve up by lengthening your spine. Breathe. And then from your upper arm, as if I'm pulling you up from your upper arm, lead from your upper arm and come on up. Turn your feet straight ahead. Put your hands on your hips. When people come out of Trikonasana sloppy, right, it puts irritation on the front hamstring attachment. But what's interesting is when you come up and you reach beyond your body, the movement gets more graceful. That should bake your noodle. That's really intense. And when you come up, you don't just reach with your hand. You keep your shoulder blade in and you lead from the upper arm as you come up. That keeps your shoulder blade towards the midline. right? As you reach beyond. Big insight, right? Take your arms wide. Turn the right foot in, left foot out. Try not to shake it all about. Press awareness down the inner edge of the front foot. Draw flesh from above the kneecap up to the hip socket. Line across your pelvis, inner thigh from the back leg away from the front leg. Awareness, a little bit more awareness to the outer rim of the back heel. Feel up your side waist, up to your armpit, and then out the underside of your arms. Be big in space. It's about to collapse when you change gravity, right? That's why we're telling you to come up and over the front leg so you don't collapse on the subtle body as much, right? So inhale on an exhalation, reach down up and over the top of the front leg. That's to keep your subtle body flowing through your whole body. Come on down into Trikonasana. Prove it to yourself again that alignment matters. Let your belly kind of turn towards the floor. Don't lose your balance though. And watch how much heavier the pose gets and the upper arm gets more muscular and your legs are not helping. Rotate the belly up towards the ceiling and open to the strength of your legs. Exert through your legs. Now draw a line from your tailbone through the center of your chest, through the mouth, through the top of your head. Lengthen that line to invigorate the pose. You heard that in the twist. The midline actually distributes awareness to the sides of the jar, right? And now from the upper arm, lead and reach beyond into space and come on up. Turn your feet straight ahead. Jump or step your feet back together. Stand in Tadasana. I hope you figured out that you should have multiple versions of Tadasana. If you're in a class and your teacher's a barker, you better have a good one. But sometimes you need a restful one. And I want you to realize and learn that you rest better when you're in alignment. Right? And that's why you need to practice stuff. So you're standing here, you're being alert and keeping alertness through your spine, but you're resting through balance and structure, softening your jaw, your eyes, letting it happen here in Tadasana. So now inhale, and with your arms coming straight up in front, take your arms up over your head. Don't go off to the side like you do in sun salutation. Take them straight up. Hit down through your heels and reach beyond your fingertips. And then exhale and take your arms down. Now, take the block, put it between your ankles. So in a second, when I ask you to take your arms over your head, I want you to squeeze the block, but I don't want you to squeeze it too hard. I want you to squeeze and lengthen down the inside edge of your legs. Inhale, take your arms over your head while squeezing the block. Anyone notice that's more graceful? Right? So if I were Anna, I'd be grabbing a belt between my hands to get more stability. And then take your arms down. So yeah, I'll do that later. All right, so stand back in Tadasana. You almost got called into attention, Anna, to have me teach something. So I'm warning you, it's gonna happen during this. Anna's a T4 paraplegic like me, and she wants to maybe be a yoga teacher down the road. So it's a great way for us to all learn together. Okay, so stand in Tadasana. So I want you to take your feet hip width apart. You have to go down to go up. Whoops. That's the principle. Okay. Inhale, take your arms up over your head. Remember the stability of squeezing the block. In other words, engage your legs. But don't just engage your legs. hit down through your heel and stretch up to the top of your head. So you're going in multiple directions. Okay. And then come down into chair pose, Ukitasana. Just like, come on down, and we're going to hold it there. Want your legs to like burn a little bit. Damn it. That's hard. Don't worry about the block, Therese. You're fine. Okay, take your feet farther apart, whatever. And as you're burning here a little bit now, just like notice how hard your legs are working and push off from there. Come on up. Take your arms down on an exhale. Take them back up on an inhale. Hit down, rise up. Come down into chair pose. We're going to hang here a while again, making the work happen in the legs, feeling the fatigue. But this time, instead of focusing on the place of fatigue, the muscle work in your legs, I want you to, this time in a second, come up as if you're being pulled up from your upper arms. All right? So that now come on up from your upper arms. And then take your arms down. And maybe, depending on where your mind was placed into your body, maybe there was a difference between coming up from your legs and coming up from your arms. Inhale, take your arms up over your head. Come down into chair pose, Ukitasana. I'm going to be here a while. I've been being extra nice. I usually would make you hold it longer, but, you know. And now in a second, when you come up, I want you to lead with your wrists and reach towards the sky as you come up. Okay, come on up from the wrists. And then take your arms down. Step forward to the, so I can see you closer, right? So I'm curious, was it the easiest when you led from your wrists? For most people it is, right? Now, think about that. By positing a connection beyond your body into the sky, having that sense of direction as you exert your muscles made the pose easier, right? So leading from your wrist didn't just lead from your wrists, it made you ground and go beyond your wrists skyward. That sense of direction, when we have our student come, you're going to hear a story from Joe where him being able, he's got a quadriplegic who could never transfer, him being able to push down through his feet gave him a better sense of direction on his transfers and made him be able to transfer where physical therapists could never teach him how to transfer on his own, because he figured out a sense of direction. Okay, so this stuff that makes your yoga poses more graceful are going to give people with disability freedom. But you got to figure out how to pass it on, right? And it's like, and what that means is you just have to know a little bit more directly or experience the happening in your poses a little bit more. Let go of your preconceptions of what yoga progress is. Let go of your attachment to the outer form of the poses. Learn to break the poses down into parts. Learn tricks like the difference between this and this, and help my whole body do yoga. And it's possible. It's freaking insane that it's possible. I can't believe it that our nervous system and our human consciousness is that connected, that this is possible. And you have, as a yoga practitioner, a methodology that's figured this stuff out. It's incredible, right? Yoga asana works because it's realized certain mind-body insights that it utilizes and then measures. Advancement in yoga isn't just being able to do more complicated poses. The more complicated poses only measure your realization. They're not essential as a learning device, right? One of my tasks in my yoga practice is to learn more from less. You need to teach me the whole from less, right? Because I'm not going to get access to all the poses. And you're going to find that it's an advantage to learn more from less, especially as some of us get a little older, right? Freaking 55, I'm beginning to feel some of this stuff, right? Okay, so it's like, whoa, I've earned the gray in my beard, right? It's been kind of a rough ride, right? But the grace here, one of the things I like to say is strength without a sense of direction leads to violence. So a lot of the people you're going to encounter who live with disability have learned to overcome their body, right? And their strength is being exerted against their body to succeed. And sometimes you got to do that, right? That's not like it's wrong all the time. Strength without a sense of direction leads to violence. Strength with a sense of direction leads to grace. So literally in your experience, remember the difference between this and this. Remember the little things that all of a sudden you get to follow something, right? As opposed to constantly have to fight for it. And I'm telling you, the cultural meme I've absorbed since I was a kid is that with a disability, you have to fight for everything. No. And if I fight for everything, I lose my body. And the price of that loss is extraordinary. And if you're honest, it's your story too. Right? It's not just my story. It's just more obvious, right? All right. Normally, if I were a better yoga teacher and I was on time, I would teach you Shavasana. But I'm not gonna because I'm a bad, mean yoga teacher because I've gabbed too much. I'm supposed to be done at 11:30, right, Amy? Somebody tell me.
That's
Is anyone there?
Yes, that's right.
11:30. Okay, so you get no Shavasana. Do it at lunch, for God's sakes. Okay, damn it. There's never enough time. It's another line from the Matrix. Time is always against us. That's Morpheus, right? Talking. It's always against us, right? All right. So get ready, Bethany, to throw us into groups. So in fact, I changed my mind. While she's getting ready to do that, everyone lay on your back. We'll do like a 30-second Shavasana. Hopefully you practice Shavasana enough that you can do it quickly, right? I can do Shavasana in the middle of a sentence. I can be speaking. I know exactly where to go to actually have the other part of me. So let the world hold you up. The floor is not going away. For some of you, well, sometime all of you need to practice Shavasana in a chair so you know how to instruct it. But not right now. So make sure you're on balance, Anna. So put your hands on your thighs and be grounded, palms up or fingertips together, right? Let the chair hold you up. Okay, everyone else, you're surrendering to the floor. Soften the organs of perception so you can receive better. Unbelievably, your mind is trained to block receiving. So that's why you soften the skin on your face and on the temples of jaw, the inside of your mouth. Relax your belly to relax your throat. Just so you know, it's the empty spaces in you that get nourished by Shavasana. There's quiet in your joints. Your ankles, your knees, your hips, your shoulders, your elbows, your wrists. Let them sigh. Let the empty just, ugh. Just the process of getting to Shavasana can be as important as how long you stay there. Of course, I'm telling you that because I don't want to do a long Shavasana. Start to bring yourself back. Slightly deeper inhalation, slightly longer exhalation. When you're ready, bend from the elbows and place your hands on your rib cage or abdomen. Give yourself a sense of boundary. Boundary after Shavasana. When you're ready, open your eyes and let the world back in, and then close them. And then you get to choose. Open your eyes. When you're ready, bend the left leg, push off, roll over to your right side. Put your right arm under your right ear. Push off with your left hand. Keep your head low. Gradually sit up.